On December 8, 2024, the Syrian Assad government was overthrown by Islamist forces, mainly the HTS and FSA, which also includes the organization previously known as the Al-Nusra Front, which originated within Al-Qaeda. These Islamist forces are mainly supported by the USA, but also its imperialist allies like Turkey, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. As a result of the protracted civil war and now the defeat of the Assad regime, Turkey has occupied some Syrian territory near its border. Israel occupies the Golan Heights and has seized Mount Hermon. The USA had constructed several military bases inside Syria already previously during the civil war, particularly to control Syria's oil fields. To construct these military bases and steal Syria's oil, the US had used the Kurds and the PKK as its puppets. The PKK, which at least at one time was praised by anarchists and opportunists, claims to defend Kurds from national oppression and to oppose imperialism and even capitalism, yet it has turned itself into a puppet of the USA, the biggest imperialist and capitalist, and the biggest oppressor of all the peoples. The situation is complicated because the Assad government also did not represent the interest of the Syrian people. It faced serious protests from the people since 2011, which were taken advantage of by the US to create the FSA, or the so-called Free Syrian Army, a US-sponsored puppet force, and launched the Syrian civil war. The Assad government was an ally of Russian imperialism and survived for this long only because of Russia's involvement. Russia also had, and at least for now, still has, some military bases in Syria. Opportunists claim that Russia is an anti-imperialist power and was defending Syria's independence, but Russia is a capitalist superpower, so why would they do that? In reality, as should seem obvious to all Marxists, Russia was acting just like the USA. It was merely trying to turn Syria into its own puppet instead of being a US puppet. Since 2011, it was completely correct to oppose American intervention into Syria under its guise of supposedly fighting terrorism and fighting ISIS, an organization largely created by the US itself. The American claims that Assad used chemical weapons and thus that the US should intervene for humanitarian reasons were probably always fraudulent. It was always correct to debunk such American claims. We should notice that the US used fake claims about weapons of mass destruction to justify its invasion of Iraq, and those claims and the justifications for the Iraq invasion are now widely known to be fraudulent and lies. But the US also learned from the Iraq war, and this time it fostered a puppet force, which it also supported with military actions, but it didn't send large numbers of American ground troops into Syria like it did in Iraq, which caused the US not only very serious problems in maintaining the occupation regime in Iraq, but also huge loss of prestige and a massive anti-war movement. The movement against the US intervention in Syria, while significant, was not nearly as big as the movement against the US invasion of Iraq. However, while it was totally correct to oppose the US throughout the Syrian civil war, which started more than a decade ago, it would be wrong to believe that Russia represented some kind of genuine anti-imperialism and that Assad is some kind of a socialist. Baathism, the official ideology of the Assad government, is basically social democratic at best, not genuine socialism, and Assad consistently supported privatizations and opening his country to be plundered by Russia. The people and working class of Syria could never expect liberation to come from Putin or from Assad, nor from the US-backed Islamist or Kurdish forces. The people can only liberate themselves with a genuine anti-imperialist struggle and socialist revolution by their own forces. While Assad faced growing resistance from the masses and responded with repression, his overthrow still doesn't improve the situation at all. The Islamists who have taken power will only continue to worsen the rights of workers even further. The country will now go from being a Russian dependency to being a US puppet. The fall of the Syrian government also strengthens Israel and other allies of the US and has potentially negative consequences for the Palestinian liberation struggle. However, the Palestinian liberation movement never relied on foreign funding or foreign support and will continue to survive and wage heroic struggle. Despite the claims of the imperialist mouthpieces and some stupid liberals, the fall of the Assad government was not any kind of a revolution, but only another regime change operation carried out by the US. It signifies that Syria has not been liberated, but has passed from the Russian sphere of influence to US domination.